What's going on, YouTube? Fair Play here. Oh yeah, back with another video. Of course, I know these videos seem very random, and it's gonna seem like that until I get into my groove and find my niche on YouTube again. I'm here for this video to do a quick review. I'm talking about as quick as I possibly can of the show The Passage. This is a new show that aired on Fox Monday night. The pilot show aired at 8 o'clock p.m. All right. I actually did record make a partial recording on Spreaker, but I have forgotten they only give you 15 minutes free on Spreaker, and after that they'll cut you off, and that's what happened. And so they basically cut me off in the middle of my conversation, y'all. I was just talking, and I looked down at my phone and realized that, oh my God, my video or my recording had ended. So anyway, without further ado, here I am going to do it again. I'm going to try my best not to get off in the weeds and give all those details like I usually do, because that can be very tiring. Okay? So anyway, The Passage, let me get on into that. The overall premises of the show is about the CDC looking for or trying to develop a cure, a strain for all infectious diseases, HIV, AIDS, herpes, all of that stuff that people catch from other people. And they're testing what they think that they have found on people in this show, and they figure out that they need a little girl, a young person to actually test it on, because they realized from their theories and from other tests that the younger the person is, the better the reaction to what they have. And so they send out 2 federal agents to go and get this child that they have chosen, and the federal agents go to get her. And one of the federal agents, who's a very nice and kind guy, compassionate guy, develops compassion for this child. Okay, he's like a father figure to her, and so he decides that he's going to defy the CDC because he doesn't believe that they have good plans for this child. He thinks that they're going to do something that could hurt this child, and so basically he goes on the run to outrun them to try to protect this child, and that's the premises for this show. Okay, now episode 1. You've got 2 friends back in 2015, 2 doctors, Dr. Jonas Lear and Dr. Tim Fanning. They have gotten word from some people from South America that in Bolivia there is a 200-year-old man that lives in a cave that has the cure, that he is he's carrying it within his body. And so they get together with some people down there, and they decide that they're going to go down to Bolivia, and they're going to get the man or get what they need from this man. Okay, so they show you these 2 friends and their team of people, some of them Bolivians and some of them some Americans. They're going down, they're walking through the woods. Apparently this 200-year-old creature / man is living in or being held in a cave. So they get to this dark cave, and there's a child that goes before them. This child is about 11 years old, a little boy. He goes down there and he actually unlocks the cage for them, and so that they can get into it, or so that they can have access to this man. And when he turns around, as he unlocks it, you notice that he's real frantic as he's unlocking this cage. And so he unlocks the cage, and the creature begins to get up. So one of the doctors, Dr. Fanning, he's so stupid and he's so bold that he's gonna start walking up on the cage, trying to see what's going on. And the little boy yells vampire as he runs off, and the man goes down there to see what's in the cage, and all his friends and stuff try to warn him not to go down there. They're like, get back, but of course he keeps going on. You know how they do on these shows, y'all. So he goes down there, and that thing jumps out the cage, and you get to see a close-up vision of him, and he's a monster. You can tell he used to be a man, but now he's a monster. Well, he attacks Dr. Fanning, jumps on him, pushes him to the ground, and he bites him on a neck, and you begin to see why the little boy called him a vampire. Okay, so they change from that scene. You think, or you suspect that Dr. Fanning is dead or something. You know something terrible has happened to him. So anyway, 3 days later in the hospital, you got his friend Dr. Jonas Lear sitting in the waiting room, waiting on his friend to come back. He's waiting on word on how his friend is doing. Well, a few minutes later, he notices his friend comes out of the hospital room by himself with the hospital robe on, or that gown on, and he looks like the picture of health. He doesn't look like he had ever been attacked at all. So he gets up and he walks over to Dr. Fanning, and he cannot believe that the man looks so good. And he starts to look at his neck, and the only thing he sees is a red blemish, a big red blotch on his neck where the creature had bit him. But it has healed up, except the color of it. And so the friend, Dr. Fanning, tells him he feels really good. I just feel great. But while he's talking to him, blood begins to come out of his mouth. So Dr. Lear is like, you know your mouth is bleeding? And so he reaches up, Dr. Fanning reaches up and puts his hand on his mouth. And not only blood is coming out, but a whole tooth has popped out of his mouth, okay? So he's like, oh, would you look at that? Like, you know. So then they change from that scene into a room. They fast forward, come up to date 2018. Here it is 3 years later. You got a bunch of doctors and lab techs that's sitting in a conference room or in a meeting room, having a very important meeting that's being led by this black doctor named Dr. Sykes. Dr. Sykes is talking about, or telling everybody about this flu epidemic that has broken out, I think somewhere in maybe Europe or something, I can't remember, but in Europe or somewhere, and they asked how long it's going to take before it gets to the United States, and she explains to them that it will probably take about 3 months, unless they can contain it. It'll be about 3 months before it reaches the United States. Okay, so what happened after that? So while she's talking, she tells them that this disease, they want to know how long it takes before it affects the person who's infected with it. She tells them, if you are infected at breakfast, by dinner you will be dead. That's how bad this flu epidemic is. So while she's talking, she's all out of ideas and she's exasperated. But one of the lab techs, a young Oriental guy, says, I've got an idea, but you're not going to like it. And we're going to have to go down to the lab to see it. And so she tells him, well, I'm all out of ideas at this point. Basically, I have no other choice. So go ahead and tell me what you got going on. So they go down to the lab. And when they get down to the lab, they show you all of these different people being held in like these tanks or these cells and these glass cases or whatever. And the people, each and every one of them are in their own holding cell, y'all. And these are inmates. What they have done is they have been testing whatever it is that Dr. Fanning got bitten with 3 years ago, because he's still alive, y'all. He's also in one of these holding cells. They have taken whatever is in him and they've been testing strains of it on inmates. All right. Now, about Dr. Fanning. Dr. Fanning, as good as he looked 3 years ago, his physical appearance has completely demised. He looks horrible. He's in bad shape. He's become a monster. He's got all these blue and red veins all over his body. His eyes are a color of like what do you call the substance? Like alabaster. They're a light brown. They're glowing. I mean, he looks hideous, horrible, monstrous looking. One of the people in there is hanging upside down like a bat. There's one lady in there that was a white supremacist in prison. She looks horrible, like a monster. And I mean, they're just in bad shape, with the exception of one person. All of them sit there and basically just stare at people. The exception of one girl who was in prison, young girl, about 20 years old she looks, and a little young white girl. She's in there, but she looks normal. And they realize this little guy is talking to them, and they basically have come to the conclusion that the younger a person is, the better the effects of the strain of this test is on them. They react better to whatever the strain is. That's what he discovers, okay? And so he tells her, he says, what we're gonna have to do is get a child. We need a child because they have better, basically better genetics, and a child can handle it because we have higher levels of whatever it was he mentioned. Y'all, I can't remember all the details because I did not take any notes, but he suggested using a child. Dr. Sykes was against the idea, but she really felt like she didn't have any other choice. So after that, y'all bear with me while I try to remember these details. So what happens is they agree to it, and they show from that scene, they show two federal agents. One of them is played by Mark Paul Gosselaar, whom I have always liked ever since he played Zach Morris on Saved by the Bell. He is actually playing a federal agent by the name of Brad, and he and his partner by the name of Randy are at the prison because they are testing. They started the testing of this strain on inmates. Okay, they started testing inmates, and so he's at the prison getting another test subject, which happens to be a young black 25-year-old inmate by the name of Anthony. Anthony doesn't want to do the testing. Randy tries to tell him that he has no other choice because he's on death row, but then Brad, who's the good guy, tells him you do have a choice, but he says, what I'm offering you is some time. Who knows what's gonna happen later, but I can grant you time, because remember now he's on death row. So he's telling him this could literally help you. This would be a good thing for you. And so he talks Anthony into going along with this testing. Okay, so back to the guy, back to the CDC. What they decide to do is to look for a child that nobody's gonna miss, that came from a pretty bad background, something, an orphan, so to speak, somebody that, people could stand to lose if something would happen, somebody that they don't value their life that much, basically is what they were saying. So they decide to call on Brad and Randy, of course, to go on out and get this little girl, who we find out her name is Amy Belefonte, this 10-year-old little black girl who is, for all practical intents and purposes, a little street hustler. She's a good kid, very smart child, of course, got plenty of street sense and other sense as well, but come to find out that her mother is a drug addict. And the way we find that out, because she's out taking care of her business. Little girl is arm wrestling for money at school and feeding herself, going to diners, eating dinner and everything. But you come to find out when she goes home that night, because they show her one particular day, she goes home that night and there are police surrounding her residence, and come to find out her mother has died of an overdose. So they have killed her mother off in episode 1. So she becomes an orphan, of course, and she gets taken into this foster care place, and she's out with a bunch of other little dusty kids, And so Brad and Randy go to where she is, to this foster care, to pick her up. When they get there, they talking to the foster care lady. The foster care lady trying to get money out of them for feeding the child, because she don't care nothing. Y'all know how some foster care people can be. Some of them, not all of them. But some of them just want money. And so she was trying to get money for feeding this child. And but of course they didn't come there for that. When they meet the little girl is very smart, very observant. She notices that these are 2 men instead of 2 women. She says, where's the woman? There's usually a woman. And so of course her better senses tell her this can't be good. So they send her upstairs to pack a bag. When she goes to pack a bag, of course she goes out the window and tries to make an escape for her. She does escape. She leaves the house, jumps out the window, and runs down the street. Well, everybody happens to notice her. Brad and Randy go after her, and I want to say Randy caught up with her first. Randy is the mean dude. When he catches her, she's kicking and screaming and squirming, of course, because she don't want to go. She don't know him. Who is this white man? I don't want to go nowhere with you. But he decides to punch her to try to knock her out. She doesn't get knocked all the way out, but he is able to subdue her and carry her off and force her into the back of the vehicle. Once they get her in the car, they're on their way, because they literally have got to travel across state lines to get this girl to the CDC where she needs to be tested. But while they're in the car, Mr. Brad, whom I've come to love already, grabs Randy by his head, because Randy's in the passenger seat, grabs him by the back of his head and slams his head up against the dashboard. And of course Randy's like, what the F? And he's like, if you ever put your hand on that child again, Brad said this, if you ever put your hand on this child again, I'll shoot you in your face. So from this point on, I am in love with Brad, because Brad obviously does not like the fact that this man has mistreated this baby. Okay, so throughout their little journey, the little girl gets sick, and the little girl has a book that her mother gave her, A Wrinkle in Time, that her mother had signed and put an inscription in for, that she's very fond of and she's attached to it. one day they see a carnival and they decide to go to the carnival. I mean, Brad is really fond of this little girl. He done talked to the little girl. The little girl is beginning to like him, and they're becoming attached to each other. But of course, Mr. Nasty Face, Mr. Randy, don't want to have nothing to do with all that. He rolling his eyes, rolling his neck. Brad then threw him in the back seat and put the little girl in the front seat. Randy just want to get his money or get this little girl where she need to go, get his check, and go on about his business, you know. So anyway, while they're at this carnival, because of course Randy is a problem. He's been a problem, and so Brad realizes that he's gonna have to get rid of, he's gonna have to ditch Randy. So while Randy is goes to the bathroom, Brad goes behind him and basically puts him in a chokehold and chokes him out. I'm not sure at this point if Randy is dead or not, but he's definitely unconscious. I'm gonna assume he's dead. Well, he leaves him there, tells little Amy that Randy's not going with us because we're going to a place that's really dangerous. And so she buys the story. They play their little games. She wins a little unicorn, and they leave the carnival. They're on the run at this point. So at some point, the people that work with the CDC, some like co-op, one of the guys that work for the co-op, his name is oh my gosh, what is that man's name? I can't even think of his last name, but he is actually sleeping with the black doctor. Her name is, again, Dr. Sykes. I can't think of this man's name, but I want to say Carter. His name is Carter. But he's sleeping with her, and you come to find out. But he is responsible for making sure that Brad and Randy get this child back to the CDC. So he's calling around, trying to talk him into getting her getting her back to the CDC. But of course, Brad is on the run at this point. So they didn't call the police and told him that Brad didn't kidnap this little girl, because technically he has. Okay, he technically has kidnapped her. But sidebar, let me tell you about Brad. Brad was married. He's married to this lady, and who still loves him. They're divorced now, but she still loves him. The reason why they split up was because they had a child themselves, who obviously, I assume, has died. She's tragically died. And Brad blamed himself, and he basically has checked out emotionally, and he just doesn't want to have anything. He didn't want to be married anymore. So they wound up splitting up, divorcing, or whatever. They talk on the phone, but she lets it be known that she still loves him and she wants Brad to come home. You get the picture that Brad still loves her too, but you also begin to understand why Brad has taken such a liking to Amy Belefonte, because she reminds him of his daughter, and he becomes like a father figure for her. So that's what we learn about him, and that's why he's so compassionate with this child. Okay, so then I just want to tell y'all that. And at some point in the show, the people from the CDC or this co-op is going to literally go to her house looking for him, and she's going to actually cover for Brad. So, you know, she really does love this man. And he realizes and decides that he still loves her. He tells her that he loves her. So anyway, back to him. He's on the run from the people. He winds up turning himself in to the sheriff's department for kidnapping. Well, while he's down at the sheriff's department, he realizes that it's not regular people that has reported this girl kidnapped. He realizes that the CDC is the one that's on him, and these people from the co-op who are really they're violent. They resort to violence. They come to the sheriff's department, a whole group of them with guns and everything, ready to kill anybody that gets in their way of getting Amy Belefonte. So him and Amy, while he's in handcuffs, he gets Amy somehow to take the key, get the key that the sheriff has left on his desk while he goes to the back. She gets the key, she throws it to Brad. Brad unlocks himself from the handcuffs, and there's this little battle that ensues in the sheriff department. And Brad is not really a killer. That's the reason why I'm wondering if he really killed Brad or just killed Randy or knocked Randy out. I think he just knocked Randy out, because Randy was probably the one that called the police and told them what had happened. Called the co-op and told them what happened. So anyway, they wind up getting out. As a matter of fact, the sheriff winds up getting shot by one of the co-op men. Brad winds up leaving. They're escaping, and so basically Brad also gets shot, but I don't think it's a fatal wound. I think he gets shot somewhere near his side, but he's driving off. So him and this little girl are on the run from the CDC. So basically, you guys, that is the end of the episode. Mr. Brad has been shot, but it doesn't appear to be a fatal wound. And he and the little girl are again on the run because he doesn't trust the CDC just like she doesn't trust them. And so it's going to be like him and that little girl, him and Amy against the world, y'all. And yeah, so y'all, I'm interested in definitely seeing next Monday's episode, because this was good. Surprisingly, it really surprised me that it was going to be this good, because I don't watch a lot of primetime TV, but this, I'm really impressed with this, and I look forward to seeing what happened. Of course, there's some areas for improvement in the show, but I'm pretty sure it'll work itself out, and I just pray, I just hope that the show can keep its momentum, because it is, like I said, it's kind of exciting, and it seems to be good, because I didn't want to see anything else about vampires. But I don't think this is going to be like vampires as usual. All right, y'all. Thank you for watching, and yeah, I'll see y'all soon with another video, of course.